Welcome everyone to the ESEA office hour. As usual, our team is here and present to support you folks through questions and provide you some updates of where we are. For those of you who may not know who I am, my name is Shelley Shassy-Jandro, and I am the director of the ESEA Federal Programs team. We will try to do our very best to introduce ourselves when we come to the section of the office hour that we're presenting. We also encourage all of you folks to put your name and your school district in the chat box. Creating a network of individuals to support everyone through this work is really helpful. First item we want to talk about today. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot more information than you folks probably are reading in the papers and seeing on the news, but we are in the longest federal shutdown. So back in 2008, there was a shutdown of 32 days. And we are now exceeding those 32 days and approaching 40 days in the federal government shutdown. We want you to know that our team at the Maine Department of Education is here. We continue to support you folks through technical assistance, as well as reviewing and processing reimbursement requests. The thing that we will draw your attention to is the technical support that we would receive as a Maine Department of Education from the U.S. Department of Ed is no longer available in this shutdown. So potentially there's questions or additional information that might be needed in some of the reimbursement requests. And if it is a requirement from the U.S. Department of Ed, we don't have that line of communication at this moment. We are hopeful that things are moving forward and conversations are being had at the federal level to reopen the government and continue work. But we want to draw your attention to the fact that we, the ESEA team at the Maine Department of Education, continues to be here to provide you service, to talk through any items like the performance report or monitoring requirements, and we're also reviewing and processing your reimbursements. Another item we wanted to draw your attention to, just a few weeks ago, we released a priority notice associated with an EdFlex program. The EdFlex allows the U.S. Department of Ed to authorize us, the Maine Department of Education, to provide some flexibility in regards to some of the statutory requirements that we traditionally request annually. And what this EdFlex will allow us to do is to make those determinations, if approved from the Maine U.S. Department of Education, and not necessarily have to reach out to the U.S. Department of Ed for those yearly waivers that we currently have been offering in the past. Again, this is an application process. It requires us as the Maine Department of Education to go out to public comment, which we are currently in. We are collecting comments from you folks either in favor or opposed to these EdFlex requirements. And then what will happen is we will take all the information and submit it to the U.S. Department of Ed. This is not a guarantee that we as the Maine Department of Education will receive the authorization from the U.S. Department of Ed to make these determinations with a process that we determine as a state, but we are in that application process, and the very first step is to gain some public feedback from you folks. If you would like, we can find the link and we can put the priority notice in the chat box for all of you folks. A colleague of ours, Suzanne, is collecting the comments, and that comment period is open through December 5th.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Rita Pello, Title I in York and Hancock County Schools. FY26 ESEA monitoring is underway. We had a training, I think, in October. The months are blending together here. For those that have medium or high, you know that you have an additional requirements to submit items in the monitoring instrument in Grants for Me by January 9th, 2026. We have it just one cycle, and for medium, you are making sure you are submitting all medium items, and then for high that you're submitting medium and high items. Our ESEA monitoring webpage has the recording of the training. It has the monitoring guidance, like the cycle, the year, the expectations, and it also has the demo for the monitoring instrument. So we did make that homepage sort of an all-encompassing support for SAUs who are in the monitoring process, but you can also reach out to your regional program manager to talk through if there are any items that are not applicable to your SAU. For instance, you transfer certain funding, or you don't have non-publics. Those are the kinds of things that are just helpful for your SAU to understand what is required and what isn't. So reach out to your RPM if you need help, and check out our webpage for support.
All right, good morning, folks. I just wanted to remind folks about the performance report. It is due on the 14th, so we're looking at Friday of this week. Make sure that all invoicing for FY25 has been completed up through 9/30. Performance report pages will populate in the application once that revision is started, if you have not done so already. We just want to make sure that folks are able to report on their outcomes and their expenditures, and then any data that's relevant to our EdFacts required reporting that we have, such as Title I, Title II, and Title IV. And then also don't forget about the Title I waiver request. So if you do have more than 15% to carry over, make sure you go ahead and go into that page regardless, because there is a yes or no option whether you want the waiver or not. And also to make sure that the performance report can be approved, the FY23 application does need to be closed out. So if you've already expended all of your funds, please go in, start a new revision, even if you have no updates to make, just so it can be go through the workflow, and so we can change the status to close out approved, which will finish off the grant. And then just a quick reminder, if you get your performance report back for additional edits, make sure you go to the consultant checklist to see which items need attention. We've seen several folks who kind of forget that step, and they try to look at the validation messages and they see, okay, well, there's no errors, there's just the warnings, so we should be good. So please make sure that you check that consultant checklist page for any items that may need attention.
Good morning, folks. Ryan Reed, Title IIA Coordinator. Just a reminder for those folks who received that additional Title IIA reallocated funding back in September, that if you are also an SAU that has a non-public school that you provide equitable services to, that they should be receiving their percentage of equitable services of that amount of funding. So for example, if you received an additional $10,000 in Title IIA and your non-public gets, say, 30% in equitable services, we'd see 3,000 of that 10,000 put into the non-public school project when we make that application revision. And those funds, just the additional funds, we are allowing kind of a waiver so they have access to them for the next 12 months. So normally, with your initial equitable services, they have through September 30th, barring some kind of extraordinary circumstances they have to apply for. But just for these additional funds, we're allowing an extra 12 months since we gave them to you folks so late in that initial kind of 15-month period. For some folks, it's really a trivial amount of money, and on your reconciliation form, you'll just show a lot of these non-public schools are going to say, yeah, we don't want the extra $25 or $30, we'll return it to the SAU. But for some folks, especially our larger SAUs with the academy schools, this is going to be a significant amount of money that they can probably put towards some good programs for their staff and students. So just keep that in mind as you're completing the performance report if you're one of those SAUs who got the additional funds.
Good morning, folks. My name is Tyra Corson. I am the management analyst for the ESEA team. Process all invoices for titles 1, 2, 3, and 5, as well as school improvement. This is just a reminder that the next federal fiscal office hour will be on January 22nd at 10 a.m. I encourage anybody that handles the federal funds or federal programs to join this office hour. Bring your questions. There'll be a member from each federal team on hand to answer all your questions. When emailing the ESEA team, Please be clear, concise, and effective by identifying the SAU, the grant year and title that you are inquiring about. I don't know how many emails I kick back and say, what grant year is this for? Because some of you have 4 open grant years currently. So help us help you in being more efficient and effective with email communication. The FY25 invoicing for performance reports. These are FY25 expenses need to be invoiced through 9/30/25. That means that all your expenses that you incurred through 9/30/25. Before submitting your FY25 performance report, the expenses reported on the performance report must equal the expenses invoiced for in Grants for Me. Please keep in mind that Grants for Me only allows you to submit 1 invoice at a time for each grant in fiscal year. For example, if you submit a Title I invoice for FY23, you can still submit at the same time an invoice for FY24 Title I. The SAU will not be permitted to submit subsequent invoices until the pending invoice reaches a status of state accounting system paid. FY25 expenses invoice for a service period beyond 9/30. So if you have already submitted your expenses for October against the FY25 grant, those invoices will not be approved for payment until the SAU receives an approved PR. This next slide is just information letting you know what grants could possibly be open for you at this time, and also highlighting the grants that are expiring. And invoicing must be made by 12/15. So keep this in mind as you take your holiday breaks. Grant closeout. Spending down funds and invoicing for funds expiring. The service period cannot go beyond the grant's end date. So in other words, for FY23 funds, the service period in Grants for Me cannot exceed 9/30/25. Now, I do understand that the last week in September, those salaries and invoices, salaries and wages, sorry, wages and benefits, here we go, may not appear on your September trial balance, but on your October one. That is fine. Upload the October one. It will prove that those wages were earned prior to the expiration of 9/30. Also, for any supplies that you invoice for a grant that is closing out, please provide all backup and proof that those supplies were ordered before the 9/30 deadline. Amazon does have a date stamp on their invoices that say when the supplies were ordered. Take note of the following: subscriptions subscriptions must be within the period of performance of the grant. So keep that in mind as you are invoicing for subscriptions that you may have wanted FY26 funds to pay for, that the subscription did not begin prior to your substantial approval date. And for FY24 and 25 funds, the subscription period must be within the period of performance. Service periods in Grants for Me cannot exceed 3 months. The monthly invoice submissions are required for anyone that is receiving over $250,000 in a specific title. And keep in mind, timely submissions are always encouraged. Right now, we are turning around invoices within a week. So you should be able to get caught up and be able to submit your performance report timely. Okay, so more money, more money. A lot of SAUs use the IRS rate for mileage or the Maine mileage reimbursement rate. Those rates are updated. The IRS rate is updated annually and is always effective January 1st of each year. The state of Maine has recently updated their rate to 56 cents a mile as of November 1st. So please make sure that you are updating your travel reimbursement voucher request forms and providing the correct amount to your traveling staff members.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Travis Dowdy, State Coordinator for Maine's Title IV programs, which is inclusive of Title IV Part A and the 21st Century Community Learning Centers program. Just kicking things off here with a couple of pieces of information related to some professional development opportunities that are forthcoming. First and foremost, through some of the other work that I do here at the state, I've recently been made aware of some free professional development being offered through the Wallace Foundation, specifically geared toward summer educational programs. I know it's a little hard to think about summer programming right now with the fact that many of us have snow on the ground this morning, but alas, here we are. So just wanted to share this as an opportunity with folks. This is an opportunity, again, free of charge for any district staff person, SAU, et cetera, who is interested in learning more about some research-backed, research-based best practices in summer educational programming. So this is a great opportunity for anybody who is looking for something like that, who is interested in learning about what some like-minded colleagues do across the country through a national community of practice related to summer programming. So if this is something that might be of interest to you, I'm putting a couple links in the chat right now. I would encourage you to visit the website, learn a little bit more about what this opportunity is. And if it is something of interest to you, definitely reach out to the email here for information on how to sign up to be part of this year's professional learning cohort. All right, and then of course, sorry, Shelley.
Travis.
And then of course, as we always do, we have a in-house professional learning calendar that we maintain with a variety of different professional learning opportunities that exist within our state agency and occur throughout the year. I'll also provide a link to that here in chat. So if you are in the process right now of planning or mapping out what your professional development might look like for yourself or your staff here in the coming months, we would encourage you to look to see again what is offered through the department, largely at no cost to your organization.
And as usual, we'll take a moment at the end of our PowerPoint to open up the floor for questions that you may want to ask orally. We've done a great job at providing you with some information and addressing the questions that are in the chat box, but we do know that there may be some additional questions. As always, your point of contact is your regional program manager when it comes to all things ESEA. If there is a question in regards to invoicing or any of the financial management part, Tyra is your point of contact. But again, we want to be sure that we're using the information that we have on the screen to reach out with additional questions. Here is where we, the Maine Department of Education, are located on some social media platforms.